the injury. It's not about the injury. It's about the recovery. It's about the recovery.
Hello, this is Tony Abbatangelo at Red Chim Studios for the Paul Padda podcast, and I'm here with my friend Adam Ganz, who's running for District Court Department 3 and a civil litigator out here in Las Vegas. Adam, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
Well, one thing I've noticed, and like I said, we've known each other quite a while here, is that ties right into kids, and growing up here like I did and you did, pools,
Yes.
swimming pools.
Yes,
Big hazard potentially.
absolutely.
And everybody goes in there putting a pool in with the best intentions. Why don't you expand on your pool litigation experience?
Sure, and you know, having a pool is such a great experience, right? I mean, that's something we all like to have, especially in this community where we get some great weather. We can use the pools almost, 6 to 9 months out of the year sometimes. So the important part is to understand the statistics that are surrounding pool injuries and pool deaths. And I think I had talked to you a little bit about that earlier. I have a statistic here that I found, and I think it's just amazing that people don't realize how harmful these pools can be. But the World Health Organization says that drowning is the third leading cause of unintentional deaths in the world, with nearly 320,000 deaths in the world. That doesn't even include the kids that are being injured or suffer significant injuries as a result of a pool drowning or submersion event.
But once again, 320,000 throughout the world. That's not all with pools.
Sure.
Right? That's Mother Nature.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's any kind of water body that might be a natural water body or anything like that nature. But
A kid getting sucked out of the beach, the undertow.
Absolutely.
Could be anything.
Absolutely. So, but for instance, in Nevada, though, I think we had something like 4 deaths a year on average. But that also doesn't include the 20 to 30 or so submersion events that we have every year.
What is a submersion event?
That's when a child is drowning in a pool and doesn't necessarily die. So they might be near
Might
drowning.
have brain damage.
100%. Yes.
Might have some lung issues or something, but
Exactly, or even a diving incident where they might break their neck.
that's a good point.
So
Break a
there's-
neck, yeah.
Exactly, a lot of type of injuries that can happen in pools. I like to focus on keeping kids out of pools, and then that's one of the things that I think is important for us to really focus on, because when you keep them out of the pool, or at least have some supervision of them, you're at least getting some kind of control over the environment to make sure that somebody is watching them and making sure that they're not in a situation where they can't get out of.
And when you're talking about keeping kids out of a pool, you're talking about the classic safety measures.
Yeah.
You're not talking about nobody gets to go swimming.
No,
Right,
of course
just to
not.
make sure we're clear.
No, I want
right?
everybody to enjoy their pools. I'm never saying that, because I have a pool myself, and I don't think that most people in this community know that we have a pool code.
I have no idea what the pool code is.
Yes, so the Southern Nevada Pool Code requires that homeowners do certain things in order to make their pool safe.
And why don't you give some tips to the people?
Sure. So the first thing is to understand that people who actually own a pool are the ones that are responsible for that. So if you're renting a pool or renting a house with a pool, you're not responsible for complying with the pool code. However, you are responsible for other safety and things that you should do. So we'll talk about that in just a second.
Sure,
But
sure.
as a pool owner, though, you're required to follow the Southern Nevada Pool Code. And if you're not, you could actually be, believe it or not, there could be a misdemeanor crime for not following the pool code if somebody does get injured. So
Andrew,
that's-
I've never even heard of that. I've been doing this a long time too, like you.
Yes.
But that's interesting that
Yeah.
there's potential criminal violation.
Yes. So the Southern Nevada Pool Code requires that you essentially have 2 pool barriers. The number one is the primary barrier around the yard. That keeps people out of the neighborhood from getting into your pool.
So
That's
once
one.
again, hence why here in Vegas, everybody's got the fences. I remember years ago, I went to visit my buddy in Minneapolis. I'm like, where are the fences?
Exactly.
But people don't have pools because it's winter 6 months out of the year.
Exactly.
But here, I never even knew that. That's why we have the side fences.
That's why we have what they call the primary barrier.
Primary barrier.
And you also know that if you have a primary barrier, you're going to have a gate that closes by itself and
Correct.
latches, right? That's a specific requirement of the pool code. It's got to be a 6-foot wall or barrier around, and it has to have a self-latching, self-closing gate. So that's one of the things we just take for granted out here, that everybody
Right.
has that.
We always grew up that way. It was always that way.
What we don't do, though, is we don't recognize that you also have a secondary barrier requirement as well. The secondary barrier requirement is to keep people from the home accessing the pool. So that the primary barrier is keeping people out of the neighborhood into your pool. The secondary access barrier is keeping people from your home going into the pool when you're not paying attention. And that can happen a
I
lot.
got a potential problem, people. We just bought a house built in 1963. You open up the backyard, it's a nice square, there's a pool right in the middle, no fence. Am I grandfathered in, or do I need to get a fence? And also, my kids are older, I don't have grandkids, because that's the first thing my wife said, was we need to put a fence up. So am I required still, even though the house was built in 63?
Sure. So two things. First of all, when you say required, of course you're not required to make your code up to code if it's already in place. So you would not be required by the pool code, because the pool code specifically says that when you install the pool and first fill it, that's when you do it. However, if you make a renovation to it, you're going to need to bring it up to code, and your contractor will probably likely do that.
Right, and here's a story. As growing up here, great guy, gave me, he's deceased now because he'd be in his 90s, gave me a high school graduation present. His kids were older than me, they babysat me. One of his grandkids crawled through the doggy door. 2-3-year-old, drowned, got into the pool. And that's why you have a fence. And that's why, like at this house, we're talking about getting a fence. Just because right now I'm safe, I don't have the grandkids or little toddlers. But I mean, who would think a little baby's going to crawl through a doggy door?
Well, that's exactly right. And to be honest with you, that's why the fencing is the most important secondary barrier requirement. And again, you don't have to bring it up. I said you don't have to, you're not required to, but let me tell you, it's a good idea to do that, right? I mean, why not be safe? You may have somebody coming over that brings a young toddler, and maybe you don't have a conversation with them. Maybe they don't have a pool themselves and they don't realize it, and they're in the backyard or something like that, and they can certainly drown in a pool like that.
And my ex-wife and I, we had a pool. We put up the fence because the kids were little.
Sure.
And I'm sure you have a fence,
Yes.
and not
Still
only because
do.
of litigation,
Yes.
but because it's common sense.
Yes.
People, I think, need common sense. So let's jump back into the pools, because I think that pool safety, pool cases are so important, because such a huge percentage of people have pools in Vegas, let alone access to pools.
Yes.
So we were talking about the primary and the secondary?
The secondary access barriers.
Okay, go ahead from there.
So the main secondary access barrier is going to be a 4-foot, I think it's 4.5-foot fence with one of those self-latching closing gates. But there's also another requirement on it, just like railings have on the top of a balcony, where there can only be a 4-inch gap in between the bars, so that you can't fit a sphere like a kid's head through there, and they can't squeeze through it.
Once again, that's common sense.
It is.
Why would you have 6 to 8 inches,
Right.
Gap in rails? Because the goal of the fence is to prevent somebody from getting in there.
Exactly.
But that's interesting. You have to put that down.
You have to put it in the code.
In the code.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, some knucklehead's going to do that.
But how many of us know that it's even out there, right? I mean, you talked
Right,
about it earlier. You didn't even realize it.
No, I didn't even realize there's a.
So they have that as the primary secondary access barrier, is the gate with the self-latching closing, certain height with that 4-inch or less gap. In addition, there's other exceptions, and this is where it comes in a little bit different depending on the house that you have. Some houses you can put literally the self-latching and closing doors, but that doesn't help you with your doggy door, right?
You mean from your house to the outside?
Correct.
Right. So your self-latching door doesn't do you enough justice.
Correct.
Potentially.
Correct. Or you can, there's new technology, right? Let's get into the technology that we have available to us. They have certain sensors that you can put in the pool that if an animal of a certain size or something splashes or anything like that, it'll set an alarm off. At least somebody can hear it and somebody can do something about it. They also have, as another requirement, is a pool cover. Some people do more than one of these things too, by the way. You can do more than one.
Is a sensor now required?
So the gate is required, the secondary access barrier gate is required, and then there's 4 or 5 exceptions to it.
Okay, so I don't need a gate if I have the pool sensor.
Correct.
I don't need a gate if I have, what was the second one you just mentioned?
You could have the self-latching doors.
Oh, the self-latching doors.
But you got to be careful.
Like you said, that's, like I said, I have always been paranoid. My mother was the Italian mother hen.
Yes.
And, we couldn't go outside when, unless somebody's watching.
Yes.
Especially when they're little.
Yes.
And like you said, you got a doggy door. That experience of my friend's granddaughter, it was tragic. I mean, there was only tears.
Yeah.
You know, a little toddler crawling
Sure.
through the fence.
Everybody knows
Just
somebody
like
like
that.
that in Vegas too.
Mhm.
You have a friend that's had a pool accident like that. I have a neighbor who's lost a child that way as well. So it's a horrific thing to hear about, to see, and it's so preventable. That's the thing here, right? It's so preventable, and if we can prevent it, if we know about it and we know it's foreseeable, then we can certainly
Well,
prevent
that's why I'm glad we had this topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got the 2 exceptions you've mentioned so far. What else do we have?
You also can put, they have door alarms. So any opening that's more than 3 foot off the ground or lower can have a alarm. So you can also do that with your doggy door as well. You could put an alarm on there.
Nice.
Door buzzes when someone walks out of it. So any opening that's more than less than 3 foot off the ground, you can put an alarm on as well. So it's got to be, it's a little different than what we think about as an alarm. It's not
Right.
the ones that just chirp when you walk out the door. It's like an 85 decibel that goes off for about 30 seconds so that you know that someone's got out the door. So
Right.
it's not the same type of alarm that you're talking about with your house alarm. So
I'm gonna
it's
avoid
something
that
different.
one.
Yeah. That one's a little tough. So, but some houses, that's the only thing you can do because maybe you can't put up a fence or maybe you can't fully
And once
secure
again,
the
I'm
pool.
in an older home now.
Yes.
You know, so what about number 4?
I think there's, let me see if I can look at the other exceptions to it. We also have door alarm, pool cover, motion sensors like we talked
The
about.
pool cover.
The pool cover was the other one too. So that is the 5 other ones, or total 5 that you can do. The fence, pool cover, motion sensor, door alarms, and then self-latching closing doors on the house itself.
Excellent. We're going to take a short break, Adam, and we're going to take a break here at Paul Padda Podcast.
All right, thank you.
Hi folks, Paul Padda of Paul Padda Law with another daily tip for you. Paul Padda for the people, always looking out for your best interests. A lot of people ask me, what is UM/UIM coverage? Well, that's just a lot of letters that basically mean underinsured motorist coverage or uninsured motorist coverage. It's one of the most important types of auto insurance coverage that you could have. What happens if you are the victim of an accident caused by someone else who doesn't have insurance or has such a small amount of insurance, and they cause you such significant injury that you're left having to deal with big mountain of medical bills, maybe $10,000 in property damage to your car? Where's the money going to come from to help fix all that? This is where UM/UIM coverage is very important, and because it can be a hedge against bad things happening to you that are of no fault of your own insurance company will step in and provide coverage and pay your medical bills. It's very important to have that type of insurance coverage. Again, Paul Padda Law, bringing you another great tip.
Hello, Tony Abbatangelo, Red Chip Studios, Paul Padda Podcast with Adam Ganz, running for District Court, Department 3. He's a civil litigator. We've known each other a long time. We're talking about pool safety. And I think that's a great topic because so many people have grown up with pools, or your friend has a pool, and what can we do to make sure kids are safe and people are safe with pools? So we've talked about the code, we've talked about barriers and things like that. What are just some common sense type safety tips you can give that you could see saving people's lives or helping their life be a little easier?
So obviously the first thing, like I was saying, is familiarize yourself with the pool code. Make sure your pool is up to code. That's the number one thing because we get distracted, right? Even as parents, I'm going to tell you that one of the other important things is to make sure you're supervising your kids. But of course, we get distracted. Doors get left open or whatever it could be. If you have that pool code or pool alarm that's up there, it can certainly help and stop those things. So the next thing obviously is to make sure you're supervising your kids and make sure you have a plan, right?
Let me ask you this. What about certain ages, like even let's say you teach all your kids to swim.
Sure.
When do you think it's okay to let them swim alone?
Well, I don't care how old they are and how much experience they have. I don't think a kid should ever swim by themselves, first of all.
Actually, let me rephrase that. Let's say there's 2 or more.
Sure.
But there's no parent at home, and they're
Right.
teenagers.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's no different than when you have, kids staying at home after school. I mean, there's a difference of opinion that your mom, your Italian mom, who is a helicopter parent, may think that somebody at age 10 is not appropriate to stay at home, but other parents don't have a choice, and they have a 10 or a 12-year-old that's watching their younger brothers. I don't think they should be swimming with no adults at home at all. I think that's a real bad recipe for disaster, for sure. But
Always
sure.
err on the side of caution is what
Sure.
I'm hearing with that.
Yep.
All right, because you were mentioning not swimming alone.
Yes.
So I agree with that. I don't know about you, but I'm sure when you were a kid growing up here in Vegas, swimming at a pool, And I know what happened to me and my friends. Somebody gets hurt.
Yep.
What do you do?
Exactly.
I mean, and you get a bunch of 10 or 12-year-olds, maybe call 911, but they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I get the teenagers may be a little better off, but if there's a parent there,
Yeah.
they jump in, right?
Well,
is,
if you
that,
look at the-
is that kind of the logic?
Yes, absolutely. And if you look at the statistics about pool drownings and injuries, the majority of people that are being injured in pools are 5 and under. And then you start raising the numbers a little bit, and you'll see that it goes all the way up to 14 and under. Those are the ages that you really need to worry about in pool safety, for sure. So those are the
Wow.
statistics.
I get the 5 and under,
Yeah.
but 14, that's what? Freshman in high school,
Yeah.
8th grade. You figure they're safe.
Well, I can tell you that my kids are just graduating high school now, and I can tell you at age 14 they were still testing the waters a little bit. No pun intended, of course, but they're doing flips off the side of the
yeah.
pool, and they're doing some things that they probably shouldn't do. And if someone's not watching them and telling them to be safe, then I think that they're going to have some problems too. So I can
No
say,
running on the wet
exactly.
pool deck.
My daughter broke her arm. She wasn't even running, but she broke her arm at a pool at a friend's house, and she just kind of walking along and slipped, of course, and fell on her elbow, and so she broke her arm doing that.
I
So.
got you. So we don't want kids swimming alone. We always want parents around.
Sure.
Other safety tips
Well,
you've seen that would have helped somebody save a civil litigation case.
Yeah. So I think teaching your kids to swim is also a big, important element of what you can do to help your kids learn. So if they do happen to get out there, if they do try to test the boundaries of what they should be doing, if they know how to swim, hopefully they can save themselves and be able to help themselves or help their brother or sister out. So
Yeah,
that's a big, big important
You
thing.
got to teach them. Can't be afraid of the water, but also respect the water.
How early were your kids swimming out here?
Oh, because I got 4 kids, so let's say there's an 8-year-old. I got the 2-year-old holding kick, pull.
Yeah.
You hold them on their stomach, right?
Yes.
And then their mom would also teach them when I was at work in the day
Sure.
and had the floaties.
Yeah.
You can never teach them too young, is my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. My kids, I think, were at swim school at 18 months or something like that.
Fish.
Just like, and then it's a great experience for them, right? I mean, they're out there with something to do with them out there during the summer or even during our spring. We can swim out here.
Cold
So
fruit, bring it out.
exactly.
Hanging out by the pool is always a great family fun.
Exactly. So as long as you keep it safe, right? I mean,
Right.
It's not safe when someone gets hurt or someone gets injured and someone gets badly hurt. So
Correct. That's the whole point. We want fun.
Yep.
You don't want to be suing people.
Yep.
You'd rather not have to have that family come to you, said their toddler crawling through the doggy door.
Exactly. So teaching them early, I think, is important. I don't think you can start too early. I think even as a young toddler, to teach them not to be scared of the water, I think it's important to do. That doesn't mean that you can just let them go swim at any time, but that just means that at least they have a safety net there in case they ever do have a problem, that they can get to the edge of the pool, right?
Got to have confidence, but also be respectful, like I
Sure.
said earlier.
So I think the other thing to do too, and I don't think this is heavy on most lists for out there for pool safety, but to me it's important. I think it's communication. I think that you should communicate to people when they walk in your house. I have a friend of mine who happens to be an attorney as well, but he brought his kid over who is younger, and they weren't quite helicoptery like my wife is with our kids. And so they were kind of letting them wander around, and I think that it's important to have that discussion with them. Say, look, this is my house, and here's my rules about how I want to practice pool safety. You need to make sure somebody's watching them, otherwise I'm going to be out here watching them the whole time by myself. So I think that communication needs to be done real early. And that leads to parties, right? When you have parties, you want it to be fun. You want to have people over. You want to have them in your backyard. You want to have them enjoying your pool. But get yourself a lifeguard. And I don't mean it has to be somebody certified.
Now, like I've mentioned, the ex-wife, we had a big pool. We always, and even when I was together, and since then, always have a lifeguard.
Yep.
Because 99 out of 100 times, you don't need them.
Yep.
Or her.
Yep.
But when you have a little kid that, falls down,
Yep.
you got to have that safety. It's a teenager generally, and it's certified.
Yep.
Not that expensive. It's worth it
It doesn't even need to be somebody certified, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think you can have somebody that's just there
to watch.
Somebody that can make a phone call, somebody that can call somebody that can do something. And I think that's really important. I know there's a case that I'm familiar with where a kid literally drowned with about 8 or 10 people in the pool because they were in the drain and no one even knew it. And they got stuck down in the drain. They weren't swimmers. And unfortunately, literally probably 20 people around the edge of the pool, but nobody was there watching,
paying attention.
So
Keeping
those
a
are
head
important
count.
things. Exactly.
Well, Adam, this has been very educational. Give me a little flip over here on your shirt.
Oh,
Show
yeah.
everybody. Adam Ganz, running for District Court Judge
Department
3. Glad you came on. Thank you for
very
the
much, Tony.
education.
I appreciate
it,
it.
Adam.
Thanks to Paul for having me.
You're welcome. I
All
know
right.
we appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
about